The conference room buzzed with quiet conversations, the hum of business meetings filling the air. I was reviewing a client report when my phone vibrated on the table. Ethan. My stomach tightened. We hadn't spoken much since I left for this work trip, and I wasn't expecting a call. Stepping into the hallway, I answered, expecting small talk. "How's the trip? When are you coming home?" Instead, his voice came through cold and detached. "I'm divorcing you." I froze. Before I could process that, he continued, "Oh, and I already sold the house. You'll need to figure out where you're going to live." I gripped the phone tighter. "He sold our house?" "You sold the house?" I asked, forcing my voice to stay even. "Yeah," he replied, amused. "Maddie and I need the money to start fresh. She deserves better than that old place anyway." Maddie. The name hit me like a slap. I had suspected there was someone else. The late nights, the sudden work trips, the emotional distance. But hearing him say her name so casually, as if I was just an inconvenience in their new life, made my blood boil. "Sounds good," I said smoothly. He expected me to break, to beg, to argue. But I wouldn't give him the satisfaction. What he didn't know, the house wasn't his to sell. Not anymore. I stood in the hallway, gripping my phone, forcing myself to breathe. He sold the house. Just like that. Without even telling me. "And where exactly am I supposed to live, Ethan?" My voice was steady, controlled. He scoffed. "I don't know. That's your problem now. I already signed the paperwork and the money's in motion. Maddie and I have big plans and, frankly, you're not part of them." Big plans. I clenched my jaw, the sheer arrogance. I had given Ethan 7 years of my life. 7 years of building a home, of working late nights to make sure our mortgage was paid, of trusting that we were in this together. And in the span of a 2-minute phone call, he had wiped it all away. "Maddie must be thrilled," I said dryly. "She is," he said, completely unbothered. "Unlike you, she actually appreciates me." I let out a small laugh. It wasn't humor, it was disbelief. "You really think you're walking away from this clean, don't you?" I asked. "I don't think, Amelia, I know." And that was the moment I decided Ethan was going to learn just how wrong he was. I straightened my shoulders, my mind already racing ahead. "Well then," I said, calm and collected, "I guess you should check your inbox." "What?" "Check your inbox." Because while he had been playing his game, I had been securing my future. And his so-called sale was about to become the biggest mistake of his life. I hung up the phone, my fingers still gripping it tightly. My heart was racing, but not from sadness. It was something else. Anger, clarity, and an overwhelming sense of realization. I should have seen this coming. Looking back, the signs had always been there. Ethan had always been secretive about money. Whenever I brought up our mortgage or asked about our finances, he'd brush me off. "Don't stress about it, Amelia, I've got it under control." I trusted him. I thought he was handling things. But trust wasn't the issue. Control was. He had a habit of making decisions for both of us. What vacations we took, how we spent our money, even how we decorated the house. And if I ever questioned it, a charming smile, a quick kiss, and a "Relax, babe. I know what I'm doing." I had wanted to believe him. I had ignored the red flags. Then there were the late nights, the unexplained weekend work trips, the emotional distance that grew between us, widening like a crack in the foundation of our marriage. And now it had completely crumbled. The betrayal wasn't just that he cheated. It wasn't just that he sold the house behind my back. It was that he had never seen me as an equal. But Ethan had made one critical mistake. He underestimated me. Because while he had been playing his little game, assuming I'd be blindsided, he never thought I'd be paying attention. And now I was done playing by his rules. Ethan thought he had won. He believed he could walk away, take everything, and leave me scrambling to pick up the pieces. But what he didn't know, the house wasn't his to sell. Months ago, we refinanced the mortgage. Ethan had barely skimmed the paperwork before signing. All he cared about was the lower monthly payment. What he failed to notice was the key detail buried in the fine print. The deed had been transferred solely into my name. He had signed away his rights without even realizing it. I pulled out the documents from my email and forwarded them to my lawyer, Rachel. She called me within minutes. "Amelia, this is solid. He legally can't sell the house. The sale is void." I exhaled a slow, steady breath. "So, what happens now?" "First, we notify the buyer that Ethan had no legal right to sell. They'll back out fast once they realize this is a fraud risk. Second, we send Ethan a formal letter outlining the legal consequences of what he's done." I smiled, feeling the first sense of control I'd had in a long time. "And if he refuses to back down?" Rachel chuckled. "Then he'll have to explain to a judge why he tried to sell something he didn't own. Trust me, he's screwed." For the first time since Ethan's call, I felt something unexpected. Satisfaction. He thought he had outplayed me, but in reality, he had just walked straight into his own downfall. That night, I didn't cry. I didn't break down. Instead, I made a plan. Sitting on my hotel bed, I went through every document, every email, and every financial record I could find. Ethan had been reckless, assuming I wouldn't pay attention. But now, I had every piece of evidence I needed to bury his little scheme. The next morning, Rachel and I had a call. "I've already contacted the buyer," she said. "They were furious when they found out Ethan didn't have the legal right to sell. The deal is off." I smiled, sipping my coffee. "That's one problem solved." "What about Ethan?" "I sent him the legal notice this morning. He should be getting it any time now. I'd love to see his face when he realizes he's completely screwed." I let out a breath, my mind clearer than it had been in days. "What's the worst-case scenario?" I asked. "For him? If he already took any money from the buyer, he could face fraud charges. If he tries anything else, we'll take him to court, and he won't stand a chance." I closed my laptop, feeling an unfamiliar but welcome sensation: control. Ethan had spent years making me feel small, acting like I didn't understand how things worked. But now, the tables had turned. "Let him try something," I said, my voice calm. "I'm ready." For the first time in a long time, I wasn't scared. I was prepared. That evening, I arrived home, my key sliding into the lock like I had done 1,000 times before. But this time, something felt different. The house no longer felt like ours. It felt like mine. I had barely set my bag down when the front door flew open. Ethan stormed in, his face flushed red, a crumpled piece of paper clutched in his hand. "What the hell is this, Amelia?" he shouted, waving the legal notice. "You're telling me I can't sell the house? It's half mine." I exhaled slowly, crossing my arms. "No, Ethan, it's not." He blinked, caught off guard. I walked over to the kitchen counter, where I had already pulled out the deed. I held it up, watching as the realization set in. "Here we refinanced. I had the deed transferred into my name. You signed off on it, remember? Or did you just skim the paperwork like you always do?" For a moment he said nothing. Then his face twisted into a sneer. "You think you're so damn smart, don't you? This doesn't change anything. I already made a deal, and you're gonna look like an idiot when it all falls apart." I didn't flinch. "The sale is void, Ethan. The buyer knows, and they are not happy. Oh, and if you spent any of that deposit, you're in even bigger trouble." His confidence wavered for the first time. "You don't know what you're talking about," he muttered, avoiding my gaze. I stepped closer. "Oh, I know exactly what I'm talking about." For once, he was the one scrambling. Ethan stood there, his hands gripping the crumpled letter like it held his last shred of control. Then, before he could respond, the front door swung open again. "Medi." She walked in with an air of confidence, tossing her purse on the counter like she owned the place. "So, this is where we're staying?" she mused, glancing around with an unimpressed smirk. I didn't move. I didn't flinch. Instead, I met her gaze head-on. No, Maddie, this is where Ethan was staying. You? You're not staying here at all. Her smirk faded instantly. Excuse me? Ethan turned to me, his face now a mix of anger and desperation. You can't do this, Amelia. I raised an eyebrow. Actually, I can. And I am. Maddie turned to him, arms crossed. Wait, what is she talking about? Ethan hesitated. That half-second of silence was all she needed. Oh my God, she whispered, stepping back like she had just touched fire. You lied. You told me this was your house, that you sold it, that we had the money. Ethan reached for her. Maddie, I can explain. Don't, she snapped, yanking her arm away. I am not getting dragged into your mess. Without another word, she grabbed her purse and stormed out. Ethan stood frozen, watching the door close behind her. I leaned against the counter, arms folded. Well, that went well. For the first time, he was the one left standing in the ruins of his own choices. And I was finally free. Ethan stood frozen, his world crumbling around him. For once, he had no words, no excuses, no way out. I let the silence hang in the air before finally speaking. Your things are in the corner. You have until the end of the day to get them out. He looked at me, his face pale. Amelia, please. I screwed up, I know that. But do you really have to do this? I sighed, not out of sympathy, but out of exhaustion. Then you did this to yourself. You made that phone call thinking you had all the power, thinking you could walk away and leave me with nothing. But the truth is, you were never in control. His shoulders slumped. He knew I was right. You have until the end of the day, I repeated. Without another word, I turned and walked away, leaving him standing there, drowning in his own failure. That evening, the house was quiet. His things were gone. For the first time in years, I could breathe. Lauren came over with wine, grinning as she stepped inside. So, is the villain officially out of the picture? I raised my glass. Gone and never coming back. We clinked our glasses, and as I looked around my home, I felt something I hadn't felt in a long time. Peace. This wasn't just about winning, it was about reclaiming my life. And for the first time in years, it was truly mine again. Lessons learned from the story. 1. Never ignore the red flags. The warning signs were always there. Ethan's secrecy, his dismissiveness, and his arrogance. Amelia ignored them for years, but in the end they revealed his true nature. In relationships, pay attention to the small things. They often hint at bigger issues. 2. Knowledge is power. Amelia's ability to turn the situation around came from her awareness and preparation. She didn't let emotions cloud her judgment. Instead, she used legal knowledge and financial awareness to protect herself. Understanding your rights and financial situation is crucial in any relationship. 3. People who manipulate you assume you're weak. Ethan believed Amelia was naive, that she wouldn't fight back. But he underestimated her. People who seek control rely on others staying silent. Once you stand up for yourself, their power crumbles. 4. Revenge is temporary, but self-respect is permanent. Amelia didn't seek revenge, she sought justice. Instead of lashing out emotionally, she remained composed and took the right steps to secure her future. The best way to win against those who try to break you is to build a stronger life without them. 5. Your peace is priceless. Letting go of a toxic relationship, no matter how long it lasted, is always worth it. By the end of the story, Amelia wasn't just free from Ethan. She was free from years of self-doubt, manipulation, and emotional exhaustion. Choosing yourself is the ultimate victory.